In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers vanished into the Ural Mountains. When searchers finally found their tent weeks later, it had been cut open from the inside. The hikers' footprints led away into the snow, barefoot. Their bodies were scattered across the frozen landscape. Some had inexplicable internal injuries with no external wounds. One victim had traces of radiation on his clothes. The official conclusion? An unknown compelling force. To this day, no one knows what happened on that mountain. It was meant to be a routine trek. A challenge, yes, but one that a group of experienced hikers had trained for. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineer, led the group of 10. They were students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, young, ambitious, and eager to earn their Grade 3 certification, the highest difficulty rating for winter expeditions in the Soviet Union. On January 25, 1959, they boarded a train east. Their destination, Mount Otorten, a peak known to the indigenous Mansi people as "don't go there." But the group dismissed the superstition. They were prepared. They set out on foot, a caravan of skis and sleds. One member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and was forced to turn back. He would be the only survivor. The remaining 9 continued into the wilderness. By February 1st, they had reached the eastern slope of Kolitsekal, a name that translates to Mountain of the Dead. That night, they pitched their tent on a steep slope. It was a strange decision. Experienced hikers usually camped in the tree line below, protected from wind and avalanches. But the group was behind schedule. They likely wanted to push forward. Their journal entries, found later, showed nothing unusual. The last entry, written in the afternoon, described a sudden drop in visibility. A storm was closing in. What happened after midnight remains a mystery. Forensic analysis suggests that around 2 a.m., something terrified them. The tent was cut open from the inside, slashed with knives. The hikers fled into the darkness, many wearing only socks or barefoot. Some had only their underwear. Temperatures that night dropped to -30 degrees Celsius. When the hikers failed to return, family members raised alarms. But the Soviet search didn't begin until February 20th, nearly 3 weeks after they vanished. On February 26th, searchers found the tent. It was collapsed under a layer of snow. Inside, everything was neatly packed: clothing, supplies, the group's camera and journals. The tent had been cut from within. Footprints led downhill, about 8 to 10 people's tracks, walking, not running. The trail disappeared 500 meters from the tent. The first bodies were found in the days that followed, lying in the snow near a cedar tree. 2 of them were wearing only socks. One was barefoot. All had died of hypothermia. But then, 4 more bodies were discovered 2 months later, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine. These victims had catastrophic injuries: crushed chests, fractured skulls, internal bleeding, damage equivalent to a high-speed car crash. Yet there were no external wounds, no signs of violence from another person. One victim was missing his tongue, and on some of their clothing, investigators detected traces of radiation. The Soviet investigation concluded with a strange verdict. The hikers had died from an unknown compelling force. The case was classified. Files were sealed for decades. Conspiracy theories exploded. Secret weapons tests, infrasound, a Yeti, even UFOs. Decades later, scientists proposed a more plausible explanation: a rare type of avalanche called a slab avalanche. They argued that a small shift in snow, combined with the hikers' own movements, could have created a shockwave that slammed into their tent in the dark. Panicked, they cut their way out, fled, and died of exposure in the freezing night. But the theory doesn't explain everything. Why were the injuries so severe? Why were the footprints orderly, not frantic? Why did the investigators mark radiation in the files? In 2020, Russia reopened the case. After 3 years, they ruled that an avalanche had killed the hikers, a conclusion many experts still dispute. What makes this case truly unsettling is not just what happened, it is what was never explained. The radiation, the missing tongue, the internal injuries with no external marks, the footprints that were calm and orderly, not panicked. These are not the details of people running from an avalanche. These are the details of people who saw something or experienced something that science and investigation have never been able to name. Every theory answers one question and raises three more. The truth is, we may never know. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of history's most haunting mysteries. 9 young people went into the mountains full of life. Something made them flee their only shelter into a lethal night. Their bodies told a story of terror and impossible force, but the final chapter remains unwritten. The mountain of the dead still stands, and somewhere in its snow, the answer waits.